Today we're creating a pattern lettering brush in Procreate, then putting it into action and embellishing that lettering with floral details and paint splatter. We'll be using my messy watercolor brush set for this project, but you can change up the style by using any brushes that you'd like. The color palette for this project is free as always. Just tap on the link in the video description and you can download and install it. I'm going to start by creating a brand new canvas. I've listed my specs on screen, and let's begin. Okay, I've got my brand new canvas, and the first thing we're going to do is create that pattern lettering brush, and then we'll experiment with it. So whenever you're creating a brush, the most important thing to know is that you need a black background, and whatever the shape is going to be has to be drawn in white. And you can't put that black background on the background color. It has to be on this first layer, and you'll see why in just a minute. So with this first layer selected, I'm going to come up to my color dot, double tap where the black is, and drag in true black. Next, I'm going to create a brand new layer right above that, change my color to white by double tapping where the white is, and then grabbing the brush that you would like to create your shape with. I have chosen the Tuesday water brush from my messy watercolor brush set. It's located in the messy extras category, and I just love the look of that watercolor texture as part of a brush, but you can really use any brush that you'd like for this. And whenever you're creating the shape, you want to make sure you're filling up as much of the canvas as possible. You'll be able to use it at larger sizes without sacrificing quality. I've decided that I'm going to draw some leaves that are kind of interlocking within each other. So I'm going to just keep this super basic. I'm going to draw a big leaf over here, and I'll have another leaf coming this way. So the idea is to have these two leaves kind of interlocking right here. Since this is kind of a V, it's going to keep doing this, but I don't want to do just two leaves. I want to have more than that. I'm going to move this over a little bit. And you can test this at any point in time and see how it's kind of looking by just duplicating that layer and then dragging it up and seeing where it's going to lock in. So this is too repetitive for me, so I want to break it up a little bit by adding some more leaves. I'm going to rotate this a little bit because I think I drew it kind of crooked. And let's see, on the same layer, I'll add in another one right here and maybe another one right here. And we'll see how that looks. So I'll duplicate this again, drag it up. You want to drag it straight up, so make sure you're getting that line right in the middle. And you can see that I'm running into this one right here. So I just need to move this one over a little bit, and then I think I'll be in pretty good shape. So I'll delete that and then reposition this one. I'm just going to redraw it since these are pretty simple. And we'll test it one more time. I'm going very low on the details of this because I like getting things set into place first. And I'm also noticing that this one's kind of curving into this one. So I want to straighten this one up a little bit, and then I think I'll be all set. If you don't like how all of these are kind of mixing into the middle, you can break it up by just extending some of the stems further. So I think I'll do that as well. You learn a lot by just duplicating this and repositioning and editing, and it'll just make you that much faster when you create any lettering brushes in the future that have this kind of pattern style. So I'm just going to bring that in a little bit more. And let's see how that looks now. Bringing it straight up. And I think that's pretty good. I don't mind that these are getting close. I want them to feel a little scattered and a little random. So I like how that looks, and now I'm just going to add in the rest of my details. So I don't want just one line through these because I have this watercolor brush. I want to add in some of this nice texture, and whenever I lift up and put it back down again, I'm getting that wet on dry look, and that just gives me some extra depth to an otherwise pretty flat looking brush. I'm just loosely painting this. I want it to have that kind of loose and carefree style to it. I am all set with that, and next we need to flatten this in order to apply this to a brush. The black background and whatever you drew on top of it needs to be on one layer, but if you ever want to change it later on, I like always maintaining access to my layers, so I just create a duplicate. It looks like I missed a little bit up here. Let me get rid of that. So I'm going to group these two layers together, duplicate the group by sliding it to the left and choosing duplicate, and I'm going to turn off the visibility of the bottom one. This is just here if I ever want to come back to it. I have those layers accessible. Next, I'm going to flatten this group just by tapping on the layer thumbnail and choosing flatten, and now this artwork is on its own layer. Next, we're going to copy this, so tap on the layer thumbnail and choose copy. If you caught my tutorial a few weeks ago on creating a seamless pattern brush, then you already know how to create a brand new brush. But in case you missed it, I've already created a new category here that I'm going to pop it into. This is the brush that we made together. All you have to do is create a brand new category, come all the way to the top of your brush library, hit the plus, and then you can create any one of these categories. And then once you have that category, just hit the plus right here and it'll give you a brand new default brush. So these are all the default settings. There's nothing special about this yet. I'm going to give you all the settings that I use for this. I'm not going to explain every single one of them because this tutorial would end up being very lengthy, but I will give you all the settings that I'm using so yours will work just the way mine is. I'm going to come over to shape first because that's what we just copied. I'm going to hit edit, import, and paste. And now we have our leaves in here, and then hit done. And over here is your preview. So you can draw with your brush at any time to see what it looks like. Obviously, this is all kind of smushed together right now. So we need to change that. And it's also appearing really small. So we can't really see what's going on. So if you come to this little icon right here, I'm going to clear the drawing pad, hit it again, and for the preview size, I'm just going to up this all the way to max so we can see it really well when I draw anything here. It's going to be affected. We're going to return back to shape in just a minute, but I want to separate these so we can see what's happening. If you come over to stroke path, if I increase my spacing, you can see we can start seeing that brush come into action. So that's pretty cool. We've just drawn it out and now it's repeating. Come to stabilization, the amount that I have right here for streamline, I've got this set to max, and then for pressure I have 30%. Everything else is the same. Under taper, I have chosen to turn link tip sizes on. I reduce the pressure right here, the setting, that default setting, down to none. I link tip sizes under touch taper, and then for the tip, I slide this all the way over to blunt. Under shape, I'm going to change this rotation to follow stroke. And when you do that, let me clear this drawing pad. When you change this to follow stroke, you're going to notice that these are going sideways now, but it's a far more beautiful look when you're using this as a lettering brush. So that's why I changed this to follow stroke. But when you do that, since it switches to the side, in order to fix that, you have to take this little green dot and move it so it's on the top instead of on the right side. So just drag this up so it matches the top. And now when we're drawing with it, it's going to make a huge difference in the appearance of it. It's going to work so much better as a lettering brush because it's going to follow the stroke that you're creating instead of everything being straight up, no matter where it falls. So that makes a huge difference. And then everything else is fine down here. Grain, just leave that as the default. It's just a big white square. These settings are perfectly fine. Under rendering, since this is a watercolor brush, I prefer to have mine set at light glaze. And under flow, reduce this down to nothing. And you'll notice that the brush no longer appears, but we're going to change another setting to make it reappear, which is under properties. So right now it's having maximum opacity at max and minimum at none. I like having this brush at full opacity the entire time because it does have that texture being a watercolor brush. So I'm going to drag this all the way back up to max, and then our brush reappears. Maximum size and minimum size are totally up to you. I'm leaving mine at 100%, but my minimum size I'm going to change to 5%. That way it's not super, super tiny where you'll never be able to see what it is. I'm going to reduce my smudge down to nothing, and then the preview I'm going to set to 15%. And then under Apple Pencil, I prefer to have the size change just a little bit. That way you kind of get a calligraphic stroke with that heavier weight downstrokes and lighter weight upstrokes with the pattern brush, but I don't want it to be too intense. So I'm just going to change the size 25% right here. So there will be a 25% shift depending on how much pressure I put on my brush. And I don't want my opacity to change at all. So I'm going to reduce this down to nothing. And under my tilt, I'm just going to keep this down to nothing as well. And that's it. You can name your brush right here if you'd like and sign it, and then you'll be all set to go. So we're done. That's all we have to do. So I'm going to come back to my layers, turn off this brush layer. Now we're going to start creating some art with it. Now I'm going to set my background color because we're creating the actual art. So I'm going to tap on that and choose the very first color on the top row. It's almost white. There's just a little bit of pink to it. And create a brand new layer up at the very top. I'm going to create my lettering with a green brush since I've got leaves. So I'm going to select the darkest green color, zoom out a little bit. Let's see how big the size comes in. That's a pretty good size. So now you can write whatever you'd like. You can reposition it where you'd like it to go. It's so fun to play around with. I also want to show you something else before we start decorating this lettering. I'm going to turn this off, create a brand new layer. You can create a wreath really easily. Just hold this until it snaps, and then you've got a perfect wreath. If you want to edit the shape, you can make it a perfect circle if you'd like. So this is really awesome for drawing different shapes. It doesn't even need to be a circle. You could draw like a square. Just wait until it snaps and then hit edit shape, and then you can choose what shape you want it to be. So that's pretty fun. It's so fast and so easy to do. So let's create our lettering now. So I have the base of the lettering, and I want to add some decoration to it. I want to make it seem like it's blooming in the summertime. So this is my main lettering layer. I can label this one lettering. So everything else from here on out is pure decoration and lots of fun. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, and I'm going to start drawing in some pink flowers. So I'm going to grab the second color on the top row. I'm going to head back into my messy extras, grab my water brush, and start tucking some flowers in here. So these are just scribbly shapes that mimic little flowers, and they're really easy to do. They don't have to look perfect at all, but it's going to make the lettering feel so full and pretty. Okay, create a brand new layer. I'm going to grab the orange and just pop a dot inside each of these for our stamen. Doesn't even need to fill the whole thing. I want this to just feel super loose and casual. We'll do one other type of flower here. I'm going to grab the hot pink, and I'll do like little daisies in here. So I'm just drawing little dots as lines for the petals. I'll put some in the middle too to break up all this white space in there. Okay, I've got those flowers in, so I'll pop in those stamens as well, create a brand new layer. I'm going to grab this light color, the first one on the bottom row, and just add a dot to all these. Okay, next I'm going to add in some clusters of orange dots to mimic clusters of flowers. So these are just going to be sporadic throughout, just filling it out. It's nice to have some variety, but still using similar colors so it doesn't completely overwhelm the viewer. If you'd like to learn more about painting watercolor florals in Procreate, I have an entire course on that, which I'll leave a link to on screen and in the video description. Okay, I'm going to connect these to the lettering, that way it doesn't look like they're floating so much. So on this layer right beneath it, I'm going to create a brand new layer. So anything I paint here will appear underneath the orange dots. I'm going to grab that green color. I'm still using the same brush. It's a really flexible brush. You may need to change the size if the stems look too big for you, but this seems to be working pretty nicely. The size that I'm at is about 11%. I'm going to embellish this just a little bit more with some extra color. So I'm going to create a brand new layer on top of everything. I'm going to grab my light purple color, the last one on the bottom row, and I'm going to do something very similar to these dots, only these ones are going to be more like lines, and we're just going to do another cluster of flowers here. So we've got some extra color and changing up the shape slightly just to break this up, but also fill it out even more. And once again, feel free to add as many or as few as you would like here. And then to just add a little bit more detail to these so they're not just purple lines everywhere, I'm going to add just a little bit of depth by creating a brand new layer, grabbing the dark purple, and at the base of each of these, just putting a little dot. That seems too large, so let's bring that down a little. And I'm just putting a little dot at the bottom to give a little more character to these shapes. And so these ones aren't floating, we're going to connect them into our lettering as well. So I'm going to create a brand new layer underneath these two layers. Since this one was our light purple and our dark purple, I'm going to select this layer, create a brand new layer so it's right underneath those two. And I'm going to grab the lighter green color and just connect those into the main lettering. And then I want to add just a little bit of foliage that's different than what our lettering is, but I don't want it to compete with it, so it's going to be pretty subtle. And I'm going to put this underneath all of my layers, so even underneath the lettering layer. So I'm going to come all the way down here, create a brand new layer, and increase my brush size a little bit. I'm going to come to 4%. Wherever there's some negative space that you feel like you just need to add something, like right here, I'm just going to draw a line up and then put some dots right along it. So this is going to mimic eucalyptus. You can put multiple stems if you want. It's just to add a little bit more variety to the foliage without competing with what's already there, because we definitely still want our lettering to be readable. We've got some lettering that's very full now, and the last finishing touch that I want to add in is just some paint splatter. And obviously this is totally optional. All of these elements are optional. Just add as many or as few or as many different types as you would like. I'm going to create a brand new layer at the very top. I'm going to select my dark green, and you can do this a few different ways. I've got a splatter brush right here, which you can just use as just stamping it in once, and then you can reduce the size and reposition it wherever you would like it to go. You can paint with the splatter itself, so I can just create a brand new layer, reduce the size, and just add in some paint splatter by painting in different areas. And then I've got some splatter stamps as well. So if you come into the messy watercolor categories, under the splatters and the splashes, there's a lot of different options that you can pull from. Let's grab splatter 6, and you just stamp these ones in with your finger, and then you can reposition them. This one's kind of at a curve, so if I want it along the E, all I have to do is reflect it, so flip horizontally, and then I can just pop it in right here along the E. You just want to be really aware of how messy it's getting. You want to make sure that it's still going to be readable, but this is paint splatter, so it's really just adding those extra touches versus making it so messy you can't read it. And I'm going to add in some different colors too. I'll add in my orange color, which I really like. I'm going to grab splatter 18 and just adjust the size if it comes in too small or too big. And then I can position it, and I just love how that mixes in. It's so fun to kind of go crazy here because we're just adding to the foliage and to the mess. You can add in some of the pink colors. I'm going to grab splatter 14 and then just find different areas where you can tuck it in where it'll make sense. And like this one's pretty straight, and I can warp it if I want it to be a little more curved where it's going to go. So there's so many different options for what you can do here. And then finally, if you want to just add that finishing touch of watercolor, I like adding a watercolor paper texture to the top of everything so it looks like it was created on real watercolor paper. So in order to do that, at the very top of all of your layers, create a brand new layer, change your color to black, so double tap where black is, and if you come back into the messy extras, down here there's 4 watercolor paper patterns, so you can paint with them and they'll be seamless paper textures. So let's grab paper number 4, make sure the size is at max, zoom out of your canvas, and then paint continuously until the entire canvas is filled with the texture. And then I always change the blend mode of this to multiply, so tap on the little N and choose multiply, and then you can see that paper texture right on top of the lettering. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you next time.